All right, you go ahead, Al.
Okay.
Good evening, all. Al Diorio here. I see the hour is upon us, 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this evening's meeting of the Hopkinton Planning Board together to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes, September 2, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Otherwise, all in favor? Diorio, yes.
Aye.
Ron, yes.
Lindelo, yes.
Light, yes. Emily, yes.
Everybody in? Okay, excellent, thank you. So before we get into the meat of the meeting, I just would like to remind folks once again that we have a full agenda. We certainly don't want to limit folks in their comments, but I would ask those that are commenting and offering thoughts to be as concise as possible. If someone has already made a point, you might just want to weigh in and somehow second that idea without repeating ourselves. Just makes the whole thing flow a little bit more smoothly. So that said, first item under old business is development plan review, photovoltaic solar energy system, Revity Energy LLC, AP7, lots 62, 62A, and 63, 15 Frontier Road, Revity Energy LLC applicant. I'm going to ask Jim to just give us a brief introduction before we get started, but want to ensure that the applicant and/or their representatives are on board and live.
Okay. Jim Lamphere, Town Planner. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Cabral from Crossman Engineering, I believe, is listening into this meeting. He has approved the development plans for this project with respect to stormwater. At the last meeting, as you recall, our chairman read into the record a list of proposed conditions to approve this project. In your packet, I provided you with a red line version, which is actually in blue, but the blue line version provided by the applicant of their understanding of these conditions that were read last month, and I concur with their findings. Late this afternoon, I added a few words to that proposed motion, and I sent it out to the planning board around 5 o'clock this afternoon. And I asked for a volunteer from the planning board to read this motion into the record if they are so inclined to do so. And basically, the changes that I made substantive changes was to number 5. I just wanted to clarify the area of no cutting to be that of the 100-foot setback area along Maxon Hill Road. So I added a few words there. I did speak with the developer about that this afternoon, and they were fine with it. They don't have any issues with defining this specifically. The other change that I made is up in the top of the motion, and one of the issues with this whole project is that the conditions that were laid forth are not consistent with the plan sets that you've been provided in your packet. For example, the landscape plan is August the 20th, and that includes a berm in the setback area, a fence on top of it, and plantings. In addition, the plan set for the project shows a access road 20 feet wide with reinforced turf underneath it to get to the infiltration B on the project. So that is also an inconsistency, because if the planning board wishes to enforce no cutting of existing vegetation in that 100-foot setback area, The berm can't go there, the fence can't go there, the pathway can't go there. The only way I see of doing it is to slide back the panels and operate outside of that. So if someone would be kind enough to read this motion, you will see that I conditioned approval. I referenced the latest plan sets that you've been provided, and the site plan. The last revision that was made to the site plan was on page 8, that was inserted into the set of site plans. The revision date on that is September 30, 2020. And the landscape plan, again, was August 20, 2020. But I put a caveat in there is that that approval of those plans are conditional to those plans being amended by the applicant in order to comply with the conditions enumerated 1 through 26 here, with verification of compliance to be determined by the town planner. So I would check it to make sure that the plan set that actually comes out of this proceeding tonight does comport with those conditions, such that there's no cutting in the setback area and other things as well. So with that, I'll cease my comment here and ask if a planning board member would consider reading this motion to approve into the record.
Yeah, it's Keith Lindor here. I'll read it unless somebody else is about it.
Can I please ask, this is Carolyn, can I ask a question before we go that far?
Yes.
You've noted in the memo here that you have not seen a letter of approval of the PSDS design from the fire marshal. So I'm looking for some guidance on what that really means.
Okay, Carolyn. The ordinance states that before construction begins of the PSES, approval from the fire marshal must be obtained. So any plan that comes out of this tonight would have to be given to the fire marshal for final approval. The fire marshal, I believe, has seen this plan in its early stages of development, but the fire marshal has declined to approve anything until the planning board approves a plan. Once the planning board approves a plan, they'll take a look at it and tweak it if necessary. So that's consistent with the ordinance. That's fine.
Okay, so does that mean that no shovels will go in the ground until the fire marshal submit formal documentation of the approval?
I would say that a building before the issuance of a building permit, the fire marshal would have to take a look at it, because when they look at approving a building permit, they run it by the fire marshal, and they won't approve the building permit until the fire marshal approves it. So.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you so much for the clarification.
If I could just mention one other thing too, and I've talked to the applicant about this. In order to effectuate this plan, the 3 lots that are a part of this are going to have to be merged. If they're not merged, they could not go forth with this approved plan, because they'd have to meet setbacks for each one of the lots individually. It would call for a redesign of the whole project, and I believe the applicant is prepared to merge the 3 lots together upon approval of the plan. So with that, I conclude, and I'll ask someone, Keith, that I believe you said you'd be willing to read this into the record.
Yes, sir. Here we go. Motion. After having reviewed the site plans for the solar array development proposed by Revity Energy for property on Frontier Road, the Hopkinton Planning Board approves the site plans prepared by Dupree Engineering as last revised on September 30th, 2020, inclusive of the landscape plan prepared by John C. Carter and Company, Inc. is last revised on August 20th, 2020, and along with the associated operation, maintenance, and control plans and management reports, conditional to the aforementioned plans being amended by the applicant to comply with the conditions enumerated herein, with verification of compliance to be determined by the town planner, finding that the proposed development is consistent with the Town of Hopkinton Comprehensive Plan and/or has satisfactorily addressed the issues where there may be inconsistencies. The granting of approval will not result in conditions inimical to the public health, safety, and welfare. The granting of such approval will not substantially or permanently injure the appropriate use of the property in the surrounding area or zoning district. There will be no significant environmental impacts from the proposed development as shown on the final plan with all required conditions of approval, and the proposed development has adequate and permanent access to a public street. Article number 1, the applicant shall post financial security in the form of an interest-bearing account in the amount of $343,254.85 as described in more detail in the cross-commissioning estimate of June 12th, which represents the estimated cost of removal in the event the town or its contractor must remove the PSES. Number 2, the applicant shall construct, operate, and maintain the PSES in accordance with all applicable federal, state, and local requirements. Number 3, regarding the well located on site and servicing the abutting restaurant property, if the well remains active on the site, the applicant shall obtain Rhode Island Department of Health approval to implement the overall site development plan approved by the Hopkinton Planning Board, or shall relocate the well to another location acceptable to the Department of Health. An amendment to the plan for placement of panels in the well setback or base area based on Department of Health approval or well inactivity or relocation of the well will be treated as a minor change. Number 4, the applicant will adhere to all setbacks as indicated on the approved plan. Number 5, the existing vegetation within the 100 feet setback area along Maxon Hill Road will remain in place and be supplemented with additional planting of evergreen trees of a minimum of 6 feet in height at the time of planting as set forth in the approved landscaping plan. Number 6, the applicant shall comply with all applicable responsibilities and obligations of the Hopkinton zoning ordinance, including but not limited to Chapter 246 entitled Non-Residential Photovoltaic Solar Energy Systems Ordinance adopted January 22nd, 2019. Number 7, the proposed PSES shall be designed and constructed in accordance with all applicable fire codes as such may be interpreted by the fire marshal. The construction of any PSES will not be allowed until the design has been approved by the fire marshal. Number 8, the establishment of the proposed PSES will not prevent the normal and orderly use, development, or improvement of the adjacent property for uses permitted in the district. Number 9, the applicant and/or current project owner shall avoid any disruption, interference with loss. Let's start that over. Number 9, the applicant and/or current project owner shall avoid any disruption, interference with, or loss of radio, telephone, television, or similar signals and shall mitigate any such harm caused by the PSES. Number 10, all reasonable precautions must be taken to protect neighboring properties from exposure to any radiation produced as a result of the PSES, including but not limited to high levels of radio frequency electromagnetic radiation. Number 11, sound emitted by the PSES will not exceed 40 decibels as measured by at the property line. The applicant has indicated that mitigation measures may be required to meet this requirement. Within 90 days of the solar farm becoming operational, the applicant and/or current project owner will conduct a post-construction environmental noise assessment to determine if mitigation is necessary and to verify that sound emitted by the PSES shall not exceed 40 decibels as measured at the property line. The town shall select independent engineers to review the post-construction environmental noise assessment for completeness and accuracy at the applicant's and/or current project owner's expense. Number 12, no blasting will be conducted on the parcel in conjunction with any activity related to the construction of a PSES, including land preparation. Number 13, the PSES and equipment shall not have significant adverse impact upon the soils, water resources, air quality, or other natural resources of the land or surrounding area. Number 14, all appurtenant structures, and equipment shall be screened from view by vegetation and joined or clustered to avoid adverse visual impacts to any adjacent property that is residentially zoned and or used for residential purposes. The visual screen shall be maintained in a manner consistent with the original approval and approved landscape plan that reasonably and effectively shields the project until the PSES is decommissioned. The owner of the PSES and any successors shall maintain the screen and understory cover. In the event that the screening is not constructed or maintained consistent with the approved landscaping plan, the town may contract with the registered landscape architect currently licensed and authorized to practice in the state of Rhode Island, and at the applicant's or current project owner's expense to review said screening to recommend solutions to rectify the inadequacy and or failure. Upon notification, the applicant and or current project owner shall promptly work with the registered landscape architect to ensure screening is consistent with the approved landscaping plan. 15. Any equipment that utilizes fluid shall be outfitted with a containment mechanism sufficient to contain at least 125% of said fluid and which prevents said fluid contact with the ground. 16. Throughout the life of the project, the owner of the PSES will provide copies of all correspondence with federal and state agencies pertaining to project permits and regulatory requirements. 17. The applicant and or current project owner shall submit an as-built plan prepared, stamped, and signed by a registered professional land surveyor, licensed and currently authorized to practice in the state of Rhode Island, showing the actual location of any installed solar energy equipment. If the equipment is not installed as permitted, the town may order its removal and or its relocation as appropriate. 18. The applicant and or current project owner shall maintain the PSES in a neat, clean, operable condition at all times, ensuring the structural and technical integrity of the facility. All maintenance shall be performed in a timely manner. Maintenance shall include, but not be limited to, structural repairs and integrity of security measures, fencing, and vegetative buffers. 19. Site access shall be maintained to a level acceptable to the fire chief or fire marshal and emergency medical services. 20. The applicant and or current project owner shall be responsible for the cost of maintaining the PSES in any access road unless adapted as a public way and shall bear a cost of repairing any damage occurring as a result of operation and construction. 21. The town's engineer or designee shall inspect the PSES at the expense of the applicant and or current owner on a weekly basis during construction and during the month of April each year after completion of the construction. Said inspection will include a review of any and all reports as required by the state of Rhode Island and the town of Hopkinton and the federal government. The applicant and or current project owner shall reimburse the town for any costs incurred as specified in the stormwater facility maintenance agreement. 22. At any time during the project construction, the building/zoning official and town engineering consultant may inspect the PSES to ensure compliance with the provisions of the PSES ordinance. 23. The final design of the containment mechanism for any equipment that utilizes fluid designed to contain at least 125% of said fluid will be included in the application for the building permit by the applicant and or current project owner. Such plans must be prepared, stamped, and signed by a registered professional engineer, licensed, and currently authorized to practice in the state of Rhode Island. The applicant and or current project owner will formally agree to implement those containment mechanisms during project construction. 24. Equipment pads that house equipment that utilize fluid are to be sealed using material that is chemically compatible with the fluid utilized in the equipment. 25. The applicant shall provide to the town planner specifications and information related to the maintenance schedule of transformers used on site. Lastly, number 26, all site work shall be performed Monday through Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Very good, Keith.
So
Thank you so
moved.
much. I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a second. Any further discussion?
Doesn't he have to read it as a second? I'm teasing, but sorry. That's a lot.
Once again, any further discussion?
It looks like the applicant would like to comment.
I'll entertain a brief comment, but we're right in the middle of administrative efforts. What have you got?
Good evening, Karen Browning on behalf of the applicant. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
For purposes of the record, the applicant objects to any amendment to the plans. The evidence presented to date supports that the plans are consistent with the town's requirements, and the board does not have the authority to restrict cutting in this way. In addition, we renew our objection to conditions number 5 and 26. As to condition 26 regarding construction restrictions, there was an email exchange with your solicitor's office, which we have requested be made part of the record. For purposes of the record, I will summarize that objection briefly. It is our opinion that there's no authority in the DPR ordinance or the solar ordinance to conditionally restrict site work or other construction activities, especially in light of the fact that there's been no evidence to support such limitations. And this is a manufacturing zoned parcel. This, we believe, is a substantial infringement on the applicant's rights and their ability to conform with the 1-year, 2-year time constraint on construction activities, which is contained in your DPR ordinance. According to the DPR ordinance, the council allowed 2 years to complete construction. This condition by the planning board would reduce that time frame by 28% or 6.7 months. If the council wanted to restrict weekends, they would have done that. Our opinion that the planning board does not have the authority to further restrict construction or site work activities in this way. Respectfully, we ask if this condition is going to be approved, a 6-month extension should be given on the 2-year deadline for construction in the DPR ordinance. I also see that Ralph Palumbo would like to comment.
Okay, wait a minute. So you've had an opportunity. This would have been a wonderful idea to raise prior to this activity. Unfortunately, this is not the time or the place to be doing that kind of thing. So you've had your opportunity to, you've had your opportunity.
Our hand was raised from the beginning of this matter to make these comments on the record in order to preserve the record. And we tried to unmute and we were not allowed to do that.
You've had the opportunity to comment. Your comments are duly noted. And I'm going to return to the administrative efforts. So planning board members, there's been a motion, there's been a second. There was no further discussion with regards to planning board members. So I'm going to call for a vote on the motion. So here we go. Diorio, yes.
Prelwitz, yes.
Light,
Lindlow, no.
Chomshinia, no.
So could we just get a recap of that count, please?
So there was you who was a yes, Carolyn who was a yes, Ron who was a yes, Emily and Keith who are no's.
Rachel. Motion passes. Okay, very good. Listen, thank you all for your efforts, and time to move on. Okay, next item on the agenda. A master plan, public informational meeting, major land development project, Stone Ridge at Hopkinton, AP11 Lot 47A, Palmer Circle, RI 95 LLC applicant. Now, before we get started, I just would like to be clear on the public informational meeting. And I'm going to read, it's only a paragraph, so bear with me, so that folks who are listening in and plan to participate can be clear on what we're hoping to, what our objective is this evening. So, an informational meeting At the public informational meeting, the applicant shall present the proposed development project for the benefit of the planning board and the public. Planning board shall allow oral and written comments from the general public. All public comments shall be made part of the public record of the project application. So this is not a public hearing, it's a public informational meeting. I would also suggest that folks also have the alternative, should they not have the opportunity to be heard this evening, to email their comments or concerns directly to the town planner, and he will pass them along to the applicant. Our objective is to get all concerns out onto the table this evening so that the applicant has the benefit of hearing them. This is not an invitation to delve into the specifics and details of those concerns. There'll be another place and time for that opportunity, but simply the opportunity now to raise the concerns to the applicant so that they're part of the record. So hopefully we're clear on all of that. I would ask Jim to just give us a brief overview of what we're looking at this evening, and then we'll go right to the applicant.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you summed up a little bit of what I wanted to say, but I've talked with the applicant and also some people in opposition to this application today. And I advised the applicant that it might be worthwhile to, I believe they have 3 people that want to present tonight. We have Mr. Landry, the attorney representing them. We have Sergio Sciarenzia as the engineer. And we also have the landscape architect, Ashley Inachili. And I suggested that each of them sum up their remarks into 5 minutes each, so that we can get to public comments. I'd really, at this juncture here, before any peer review might be conducted, if the planning board so orders that tonight, I would like to hear as much comment from the public on the particulars of these plans so that the applicant knows what the concerns are of the various parties and they can have much more time to address them. So, with that said, I know the Conservation Commission has some comments that they'd like to have the applicant addressed. I have an email from the chairman, Harvey Buford, which I will forward to the planning board, excuse me, and also the applicant as well, so they can tend to these concerns. But I'd like to hear from everyone so that we can have an effective meeting. Again, this application will be coming back to the planning board a number of times before the master plan is approved. There's a lot to look at here, and the public will have additional opportunities to weigh in on this. But for now, I'd like to hear exactly what concerns you have with the features on the plan that's been developed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So with that, I'd like to go right to the applicant. If you've got 3 folks that you'd like to present this evening, I would just ask the first party to step up and give us their presentation.
So please press *9 if you are the applicant and you're going to be speaking first in regard to this agenda item.
Hello, is anybody out there?
I'm the court reporter for Attorney Landry.
Yes, I'm waiting for all of the sorted people who will be speaking in regards to this to press *9 so I can identify them.
This is Jim Lanphier, Town Planner. As I just stated, I think we're waiting for Mr. Bill Landry to open the presentation on this case, followed by Sergio Sciarenzia, and then probably followed by the landscape architect, Ashley. So if any one of you 3 are there, please acknowledge your presence so that you can present this application.
Ashley is here and Sergio is here, and I've asked them to unmute themselves and they have not yet done so. Sergio has. Go ahead, Sergio.
Finally got it. Attorney Landry was going to kick off the meeting. I don't know if he's in the meeting yet, but in the interest of time, I'd be happy to start, unless you want to give it a few more minutes to see if Mr. Landry's going to join us or unmute. I'm assuming he's on. I can try to contact him.
You can just go ahead, Sergio.
I concur.
Okay. Bill can fill in where I leave off, and I will do my best to keep this brief. For the record, Sergio Cerenzia with Cerenzia and Associates, offices located at 99 Mechanic Street in Pawcatuck, Connecticut. I am registered as a professional engineer in the state of Rhode Island, and the plans and the application was prepared under my direction and my responsible charge. The reason we're here this evening in front of you, as mentioned, was for a master plan submittal on behalf of the applicant RI95 LLC, Stone Ridge at Hopkinton. The site is located at Tax Assessor's Map 11, Lot 47A, off of Palmer Circle. The lot is approximately 252 acres. It was previously permitted under the Brayburn Country Club in 1993, part of an 18-hole golf course with a clubhouse. And currently, we are seeking a permit for a solar facility. So the current site under the existing conditions is generally an undeveloped wooded lot. Has some overgrown gravel areas, a small pond on the east side of the lot. The pond appears to be constructed of an irrigation reservoir as part of the previously permitted project. Grades on the property generally slope in the westerly, northerly, and easterly directions from High Point near the center of the lot. And the slopes on the lot range from between 2 and 20%. The property is abutted by undeveloped lots to the north, west, and south, residential lots to the east and southeast, and farmland to the northeast. Palmer Circle provides access to the site towards the east. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail with respect to the types of soils. It varies widely across the site. And the lot majority of it is located in a FEMA Zone X, which is an area that is not of a flood hazard, and a small portion of it in Zone AE with a base flood elevation of 75. A small portion of the lot in the proximity of the Conotchet Brook is where that zone is located. There's multiple wetland complexes on the site as indicated by our site map and survey. The wetlands were flagged by Natural Resource Services. Ed Abazinas is on the call this evening if there are any questions regarding the wetlands. With respect to stormwater, there is the project will discharge to the Conotchet Brook and its tributaries to the east, and Tamaqua Brook and its tributaries to the west. The state of Rhode Island 2016 impaired waters report does identify Conotchet Brook as having impairments for cadmium, copper, lead, and enterococcus, and TMDL for enterococcus, and the Tamaqua Brook having impairment for TMDL and for enterococcus. Historically, the site does have a cemetery, which has been identified on the survey, known as the Warden Lot, historical reference numbers at HP 043. There are a series of stone walls and existing trails on the property. It's not within a natural heritage area, a scenic road corridor, or a state designated scenic area. There are no biking or bridle paths within or on the adjacent property. No play fields, playgrounds, or other recreational resources either. The Narragansett Trail is one of the trail features as identified on the 2001 USGS map. The proposed site condition is a proposed solar facility consisting of approximately 102.6 acres. That is the area of the fenced-in area of the solar array, and in addition to a 50,000 square foot warehouse building. The building will have parking, utilities, well, on-site wastewater treatment system, and stormwater management area. The site will be developed with appropriate stormwater management areas as identified on the site development plan. We've approximated the sizes and locations of those areas in order to meet the stormwater requirements for the state of Rhode Island. We will require an on-site wastewater treatment system as far as the state permitting goes, as well as a Rhode Island freshwater wetlands permit and a Rhode Island pollutant discharge elimination system, or RIPDES permit, for the site, given we are over 1 acre of disturbance. We will have to address construction phasing, groundwater and soil investigations, and stormwater and septic when we get to the preliminary phase of permitting. I will leave architectural, landscape architectural to the other project team member, Ashley. Just lastly, the traffic for a facility like this is very minimal and would not pose an adverse impact. I don't know if I kept it to 5 minutes, but I think that's all I have for my presentation. I could defer over to Ashley unless Bill Landry is on.
Thanks, Sergio. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So my name is Ashley Anicelli-Cullian. I am a principal and owner of Traverse Landscape Architects, located out of Providence, Rhode Island. I prepared these site plans along with members of my office. Traverse Landscape Architects was brought on board to look at the existing vegetated condition as well as any sort of sight lines and revegetation required. We provided multiple site visits in which we inventoried the different species on site, specifically the native species like bayberry, highbush blueberry, gray birch, eastern root and oak species, and Scotch pine and white pine. Using that information, we also started looking at view corridors and sight lines, which is evident in the plans that we provided.
Hey, Ashley, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt you. Bill Landry is trying to get in to the call,
Great.
but he's having some technical difficulties. So I didn't want to. I'm apologize to interrupt, but is there a way that we can help Bill into the meeting, Jim or someone else?
So he is in the meeting. He just has to press *9, and then I can recognize.
*9. Okay, I will let him know.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. I'd like to have Ashley continue with the presentation, though we're knee deep in it, so let's just get it done.
Great.
Go right ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. So the proposed condition is most evident if you refer to sheet L0.1.
Ashley, I'm sorry. Ashley, I'm sorry. You're cutting in and out a little bit, so if you could just slow it down, please. This is the court reporter.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. So the proposed condition is most evident on sheet L0.1. There you will note that the location of the proposed solar arrays is fairly remote. It's bordered on the east, west, and most of the north side with wetlands and their associated buffers. Along the south portion of the site, the abutting condition is mostly vegetated forest, which we identified to be mostly birch trees as well as pine. And the solar arrays have been, and associated fencing have been located a minimum of about 100 feet away from all property lines. And the design intent will be to maintain as much of the surrounding 100-foot buffer as possible, leaving enough space for the installation of a 7-foot perimeter fence around the solar arrays, additional vegetation where required, and access to maintenance. Some other notes you will note on the proposed condition plan, we are showing locations to the closest abutters. The closest abutting structure is 640 feet away from the project area. This is represented as section 7. If you refer to sheet L11.1, the next closest is 890 feet and then 1,100 feet, respectively. All those distances are measured from the structures to the project limit of disturbance. So this was part of a study we were doing to look at the sight lines from abutting properties into the site with the solar arrays there. So we understand that these are the closest structures. This could currently change in the future. So part of our study and our revegetation plan was to incorporate the addition of evergreen plantings anywhere we felt like there could be opportunities for open views in the wintertime. So along the southern side of the site, beyond the substantial vegetated buffer, which is about 100 feet that exists, the interior edge of the buffer will be reinforced with the addition of additional evergreen trees, which will provide additional coverage to us into the winter. This can be viewed on sheet L10.3 and L10.4. These trees are comprised of native species, Pinus strobus, Abies concolor, Juniperus virginiana, and Thuja plicata. These trees will be installed in a row or staggered to create the greatest visual buffer possible. And all trees will be installed at a minimum height of 7 to 8 feet, and their mature height will range from 20 to 60 feet. So along with any revegetation planting, which is evident on all the planting plans, we also looked at replanting the bioretention areas, which will be proposed to be planting with native seed mixes. And then in areas of greater disturbance, we will also be incorporating more pioneer species like birch and junipers. That concludes the landscape presentation, and I will turn it over to Bill Landry.
Thank you very much.
Bill, are you in yet?
No, just to explain.
Yes.
So Sergio, can you please communicate to Bill that he has to call in, press *9, then when I ask him to unmute, he has to press *6. I've tried to do that probably 3 times. So.
He claims he's tried to do the same. I just spoke with him.
All right, well, if
he's
you
got
want him
those
to
directions.
if you want him to speak,
I'm sorry?
to do that. If you want him to speak, he has to do that again. All right, I see him.
Hello? Hello?
Bill?
Is that Bill?
Yes,
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello?
yes.
Hello, we can hear you.
Oh, thank God. I don't know. I tried 4 times to do this. *6, *9, and as soon as I unmute, it says you've been muted. And so whatever. I don't mean to interrupt. I've been listening to the whole thing here. I know that Ashley's halfway. I just soon have her complete her presentation, and then I'll just have a few things to add after that.
That presentation has been completed, Bill. Please proceed.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Well, sorry, this is a little bit disjointed, but we were trying to respect tonight the board's stated intention for Jim Landfair to leave ample time for the public to have input. So my intention was at the beginning to just remind the board that, you know, we're dealing with this 252-acre parcel off Palmer Circle, and that for all of the solar projects that the board has had, many of them controversial and many of them with good cause controversial, this one really stands apart because we're dealing not with a residential zone that's seeking to be rezoned to a commercial zone, but a zone that starts off as a commercial zone in which solar is a permitted by right use. And although there are some detractors that insist on raising that issue over and over again, the fact that we're dealing here with a permitted use has been resolved dispositively not once but 4 times by the zoning and planning officials of the city and the solicitors. Once back in 2011, when Mr. Dubs was doing the very same thing with a portion of this project, relying on the 1990 zoning amendments it was determined that he could proceed as a matter of right with a solar project without further amendment than the amendments that had already been made. Again, 2011, the same determination in writing, unappealed by the building official, Mr. Ward. 2019, involving my client in this project, determination by Sherry Desjardins, the zoning officer, and more recently in 2020, the current solicitors affirming the same result that had been affirmed before, that a solar use by itself under the PSCS ordinance or in combination with another permitted use under the regular table of uses applicable to the commercial zone as amended by the 1990 amendment is a use permitted by right. Now, that doesn't mean that the use evades planning board review, and that's why we're here. And because we're featuring not just a solar facility, but also a warehouse building, we're dealing with two different uses on a 252 acre tract, and therefore are regarded as a major land development project. And we're pursuing tonight the master plan or conceptual stage of review. And I just want to let the members of the public know that the engineering issues have not been all fully resolved, because in a major land development project, we begin with a concept stage and then proceed to hard engineering. So this project's going to be reviewed by Crossman at the master plan stage, and the concept stormwater management program and other issues that Sergio made reference to will be vetted, and then it'll come back for a public hearing at the preliminary plan stage. That's not, and so the engineering details are not fully resolved, not because we don't want to resolve them and not because we can't resolve them, but because we're not at that stage of review where all of those issues are definitively dealt with. And there's a reason why it's set up that way, and that's the process that we're pursuing. So that's all I had to add from a legal perspective to what Sergio has contributed from an engineering perspective, and what Ashley Iannucci has contributed from a planning and landscape concept. Her focus, of course, being on buffering the very few existing residential exposure areas. The residents are very far away, and also potential future residential development. So having said that, Mr. Chair, I will, as we've been requested to do, yield at this time with interest in favor of the public having an opportunity to express their comments on our master plan.
Very good, Bill. Thank you so much. So why don't we do it this way? How about if planning board members chime in first? Again, appreciating that there's probably significant public interest here, so we want to allocate adequate time for them. But we certainly want to get everybody's concerns out onto the table. So planning board members, why don't you start off, keep your comments as succinct as possible, and let's go.
Ron here. I think I'll hold my comments and ideas and concerns until after we hear what the public has to say.
Okay, very good. Any other planning board
Keith
members?
here. I agree with Ron. Same thing. I'll defer to the public opinion and comments.
This is Carolyn. I'm not going to defer. My thoughts or my questions would be going forward, and I don't expect an answer here, is we're going to want to know specifically what type of warehousing is going to be done in this 50,000 square foot building. Is it general warehousing or is it chemical storage? I'd like to get closer to that because it's a big project to undertake without knowing why you're doing it. Another comment that I would have going forward is that our landscape information, the next time we get together, include a general idea of how many acres of clear cutting is going to be done, what's the quantity of trees per acre. And the last comment I would make would be regards to the Narragansett Trail going through there. Conceptually, what we're looking at doesn't acknowledge any of that. And it only draws me further into the original condition set by the council that they were hoping to maintain 40% of open space. And I'd like to know how close we can get to that. That's all I have, and I don't expect any answers to anything, but those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Carolyn. Emily, comments?
This is Emily. Actually, Carolyn raised most of the items I was interested in raising as well, and I'm eager to get to the part where we hear from the public. So I will be done. Thank you.
Okay, very good. And my only comments focus primarily on the trail system associated with the project. I'm looking for, not only respect for the trail system itself, but for adequate buffering from that trail system so that folks traversing that system can still continue to enjoy the ambiance of the trail. So again, I don't need to delve into it. That's my concern. And with that, I would be willing to go to the public right now.
Deb would like to make a comment.
I'm sorry, Deb.
Okay.
Comment? Deb, go right ahead.
Thank you, Al. I concur with you and Carolyn and Emily about the trails, the trail system. It's not even thought of on this except for a little dotted line. And also there are some historical features on this land as well. Most of them seem to be in the area of the cemetery, but we'd like to preserve as much as the historical character as possible. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Deb. So with that, can we go to the public? Yes. So those in the public wishing to be heard, again, public informational meeting, not a public hearing. This is your opportunity.
Go ahead, Mr. Mott.
Hi, thank you. My name is Corey Mott. I'm the secretary of the Narragansett Trail Restoration Project Committee. We're part of the Narragansett chapter of the Appalachian Mountain Club, which is based out of 10 City Square in Boston, Massachusetts. But we are local people in the community, and we're working to restore the trail. We've already restored it at Black Farm Mansion area, and we're working on Conacha Preserve in other areas. It is represented on the map in the plans as the Narragansett Trail, and we're requesting permission to walk and flag the trail so that the developers are aware of its location. We'd be happy to do that to help them out. We really would like to preserve the trail where it is located on the property, but if that's not an option, obviously because it's a solar farm, then that we come to some consideration of some reasonable alternatives so that the trail can still stay in that general area. I just wanted to share that.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on.
All right, I'm going to read the last 4 digits of your phone number. 5499. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name for the record.
Okay, my name is Peter Squires. I'm an attorney with the law firm Asillo, Tyson, Rich in Providence. I'm here on behalf of Tom and Cynthia Skolko. They're the owners of Assessor Plat 11, Lot 44, a residentially zoned property that is a direct abutter to the project to the south. I have with me here tonight Peter Friedrichs. He's a professional planner. We have him here to present expert testimony as a planner. If I could, I'd like to just start by presenting our argument and then introducing Mr. Friedrichs after that. I have to start off, and I know that this came up at the preliminary plan stage and that there was an opinion from your solicitor on this. But I need to start off by stating our respectful but vigorous disagreement that this is a permitted use for this lot. I know that Mr. Landry has cited that there's been previous zoning certificates in the past saying that any commercial use is allowed on this lot. But frankly, those zoning certificates were wrong. For the record, I need to put on my disagreement with them. But beyond that, I really think that sets up the context and the background for why this project is not appropriate for this area. And so after I make that argument, I'll transition into Mr. Friedrich's testimony. But essentially, you have to start off with, this is a commercial special zoned property. It is not a commercially zoned property. Back in July 2nd of 1990, the council rezoned this property to allow for one specific project. When they rezoned the property, they made 10 findings of fact, and all those findings of fact that was consistent with the comp plan were specific to that project. And then in the 11th paragraph, they set out, and I'll quote this because I think it once you read the language, it's unavoidable. In the 11th paragraph, it says, this application is granted subject to the following restrictions. And then it set out a number of restrictions, and in subparagraph C, it says, and I quote, the maximum number of structures and the uses in this zone permitted in connection with this project shall be as proposed. And it lists a number of uses, none of which are solar. The clear takeaway from this is the unavoidable takeaway is that this project was rezoned. It's in the middle of residentially zoned parcels, and it was rezoned for one specific project. It wasn't rezoned for any commercial project that might come down the pipe. The principle in law, the fancy way of saying it is expressio unis exclusio alteris. That's just a fancy way of saying that if you set out a list of permitted uses, you need to stick to the list. This would be no different than if I was given a grocery list by my wife, and she sent me to the store to buy milk, bread, and eggs, and I came back with a large meat lover's deep dish pizza. I said, well, you know what? It's food. That defies common sense, because when you're given a list of permitted uses or permitted anything, you need to stick to the list. So the idea that you can put solar onto this project when there is a specific list of uses that are allowed, it just does not fly. So what you really have here, what this results in, is what you call a bait and switch. This was allowed to be rezoned in the middle of residentially zoned parcels with one use contemplated. And instead, a developer is looking to develop with a completely different use. And the interpretation to get to that completely defies one of the cardinal rules of zoning, which is restrictions apply to the land. So those restrictions of that list applies to the land. It doesn't apply to the developer. So these restrictions didn't just apply to the Brayburn project, they apply to the land. With that, I'd ask, and really, if it's accepted that this commercially special zoned property can be used for any commercial use, I think that's a dangerous precedent to set, especially since a number of properties in recent years have been rezoned from residential to commercial with the understanding that the only permitted use would be solar. If you open up this precedent to allow other types of uses, all those projects which were rezoned from residential to commercial only for solar will all of a sudden be allowed for any commercial use. So I think that's a precedent that the board really needs to be careful with. With that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Fredericks. So I'm not sure if the administrator could pull him up now. If he could give a little bit of his CV, and could also provide testimony to why this issue is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. But before I do that, I'm not sure if I'm going to get another opportunity to speak, so I'm just going to list off a number of issues why this application is not complete and not in order for consideration tonight under your own solar ordinance. So starting with section A7 of the solar ordinance, it says prior to submission of a project to the planning board, you need a letter from the fire marshal. So there was nothing online to that. I didn't see anything to that effect. So that's one missing item. Section A14 requires a noise study to be done as part of the application. Again, nothing done to that effect was not submitted with the application. Section C1 requires an environmental impact statement to be provided that includes a narrative on the solar system's impact on wildlife migration and other resultant habitat changes. Was not submitted. C1 also requires soil erosion and sediment control plan, stormwater management plan, also not submitted. Section B2 requires an operation and maintenance plan, and Section B5 requires an estimate of the financial security instrument to be provided. Also not submitted. Finally, and I think this is the biggest flaw, which is really a fatal flaw to this application, but subsection A6 requires for all solar energy systems, they're required to submit and get approval under development plan review, pay the fee, submit the application under Chapter 13.5, Article 3. Now, I know that Mr. Lanley correctly pointed out that this also needs land development review because it has a commercial building on it. But your subdivision regulations address how to handle an application that requires both development plan review and land development plan review. That's section 9.4.1 of your subdivision regulations provides that you can combine these reviews, but only upon reviewing the two applications and making an affirmative finding that the purpose of the development plan review would be served by a combined review. Without that, and it hasn't been posted, there's been no application submitted, no fee submitted for development plan review. Without that, it's not in order for you to vote on this application. So with that, I would yield the floor. Mr. Fredericks is in the meeting as well. I'd ask that he be allowed to speak and he can provide his expert testimony as well as his CV about why this project is not consistent with the comprehensive plan and why the project should be denied. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I'll interject here just a moment. Delighted to hear from your expert. I would ask that he please keep things brief. This is not a public hearing. We're not taking testimony here. We have, I'm sure we have members of the public that want to be heard as well. So again, please keep it brief and let's hear what you have to say.
Go ahead, Mr. Fredericks.
He is on the meeting.
Mr. Fredericks.
Hello? Hello? Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Oh, that was fun.
So I believe my resume was emailed to Mr. Lamphere. I don't know if it's come to the board, but my name is Peter Friedrichs. I've been a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners since last year. I'm the city planner in Newport. I'm obviously not here in that capacity this evening. And I've been doing planning consulting, started doing it 10 years ago and started up again in private practice in between my time in Central Falls and Newport. So I don't know how the board typically handles this. Obviously, it's not a public hearing.
So public informational meeting, please proceed with your presentation.
So I just wanted to start off by explaining to the public, I'm sure the board and the applicant are aware of this, what's in front of the board. So this is a land development project, and that's a tool in state zoning law that's really plan development, whereby the permitting authority is able to establish controls over development and limit that development. And there's, of course, conditions by which they need to do that. But this petition that's in front of the board is the perfect example of where plan development is a good tool, and being that this project is going through the land development project approval process, it gives the planning board a lot of discretion in how it reviews that project appropriately. So I want to just speak quickly about the findings that the board is going to have to make before they can vote on this petition at the master plan stage. The first one is finding of consistency with the comprehensive plan. And in this case, I do think that it's going to be the hardest finding for the board to find affirmatively. The Hopkinton comprehensive plan was adopted in 2016 and is still in effect. There are many planning board members, staff, and public that may be more familiar with it than I am. And when looking at the comprehensive plan, you want to look at it holistically and applying it to this petition. So the order was set by Hopkinton, and it is divided into different chapters. The state mandates a variety of chapters. At the beginning of Hopkinton's comprehensive plan are recreation, conservation, and open space, which I think conveys the importance that the community assigns to it. And there's some early goals that are listed in the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is set out in goals, policies, and actions. I've also heard board members reference some of these goals with other similar petitions in front of the board in recent months. So the first one I want to call out is Goal Recreation 1, to increase and improve recreational programs, facilities, and access for all of Hopkinton's residents. Next is Goal NR1, to preserve, conserve, and protect the significant natural resources of Hopkinton as an endowment for the future of the town. And Goal HCR1, historic and cultural resources, to preserve, protect, and maintain the town's historic, cultural, and archaeological resources so as not to lose the past character of Hopkinton. Photovoltaic solar energy systems are not a focus of the plan and are tucked into the public services and facilities chapter. And I just want to note that, having only just recently looked at the Hopkinton comprehensive plan, it's not clear to me why it was tucked into that chapter. But it talks more holistically about energy and focuses on the public consumption by Hopkinton's municipal services of electricity. There is a policy in that chapter, policy PSF 17, that is described as encourage renewable energy projects in the private sector. And it's not clear what the applicability of that is. It's nested into goal PSF 5 to reduce Hopkinton's energy consumption. And I just want to call out this project that's proposed is huge and really a utility scale project. So it seems like what Hopkinton is looking for is more its municipal energy needs and energy independence, rather than serving as a regional energy producer for areas with high energy demand, i.e. regional cities. And so this is in the public services and facilities chapter. It's not in the economic development chapter. And there's a policy NR5 that also talks about energy, and the way that it talks about it is promote energy self-sufficiency using renewable energy and energy conservation. So again, it doesn't seem like what Hopkinton is looking for is being this regional energy producer. Specifically, recommendation 17 of the public services and facilities chapter calls for adopt regulations that encourage small scale renewable energy installations. Again, that's not a 30 megawatt system. So I just want to touch on some of the regional context for what's causing this solar development in Hopkinton. The board is probably very familiar with this. There's been an onslaught of solar farm proposals in Western Rhode Island. And that's because land prices are cheap there. And this is due to a perverted incentive put in place by the state of Rhode Island. And this has resulted in the clear cutting of undeveloped land, and in this case, contrary to Hopkinton's comprehensive plan. With regard to the specific proposal, generally, these types of proposals are pure pursuits of profit, where minimal site investment is made and monotonous fields of solar panels are walled off from the surrounding area. This particular proposal is on a site that has unique characteristics that make it extra problematic, namely its ownership history and the Narragansett Trail. To get back to the solar incentive as such a problem, the Office of Energy Resources published a report on August 18th, 2020 that noted that Rhode Island's future energy plans can be through land that has already been developed, and that there's no need for additional cutting and clearing of land for solar production. And I can share that report with the board. So I think we can assume that the state will be correcting its incentives moving forward. Some of our neighbors already have, and hopefully there won't be proposals like this. And the board, frankly, won't have to waste its time reviewing proposals that are inconsistent with its comprehensive plan. So I just want to quickly touch on the other findings. Attorney Squares has talked about consistency with the zoning ordinance. That is the board's and the board's finding alone to make. It can rely on all sorts of experts, including its own solicitor, its zoning officials, but it's the board that's going to make the determination of whether or not this project is consistent with the zoning ordinance. And I also want to call out within the photovoltaic solar energy systems ordinance, under the PSES requirements section A1, it talks about setbacks from residential zones, and it allows the planning board to extend setbacks adjacent to residential zones. I would argue that a 100-foot buffer is insufficient and that the planning board should mandate a larger buffer if by any means this project move forward. Again, I don't think it should, but a larger buffer should protect neighbors, especially as the property owner could top trees that block sunlight from the south. The residential zones are to the south of this property. And I think that the conditions placed by the board on the previous proposal are appropriate to try and protect some of that buffering. And then for finding 3, which talks about environmental impacts, as Attorney Squares mentioned, the fire marshal should be involved. And in this case, the fiscal impact statement notes that the intended use of the building is battery storage. The amount of batteries necessary to provide energy storage for a facility of this size are immense, and they could be perceived as to be an area of fire hazard. So the planning board should at a minimum hear from a fire official as to whether this use can be safely accommodated at this location. Finding 4 only applies to subdivisions, and with regard to finding 5, this is the only finding that the petition meets. It does appear to have sufficient access to a street. Unfortunately for the petitioner, they're required to positively meet all 5 findings, so the project cannot be approved as proposed. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. So moving forward, are there members of the public who wish to be heard here?
Yes. So again, I'm going to read the last 4 digits. 5761. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, Carol DeRosiers.
Go ahead.
I guess I just wanted to mention a little bit of how I perceive some of the history of this beyond the original Brayburn proposal. When I first heard about Solar Ridge coming forward and talked to our town planner, you know, I was told about how there were a bunch of buildings, you know, potentially an assisted living facility, medical buildings, etc., and a small amount of solar. Well, then we come to February of 2020 and are presented with a 215-acre solar facility, 5 30,000 gross floor area buildings. And it was stated in that meeting that solar actually was the primary and the buildings were secondary. Now here we are with 102.6 acre solar, 150,000 square foot building, and I feel there is actually no assurance that this 50,000 square foot building would ever come to fruition and provide any sort of jobs or other benefits to the town. I think this really is all about solar as a primary development, which only benefits the landowner and the solar development. So when we talk about, you know, I think Attorney Landry said it's not just solar, but also this warehouse facility. why can't the warehouse facility be first? Additionally, I wanted to mention that something was said about the Tamaqua and Conachit Brooks would be the discharge area. And I think it needs to be taken into consideration that that is part of the Wood-Pawcatuck watershed area, which is a designated watershed area, national designated watershed area. My final concern is that here we are in Hopkinton with all of our commercial property being threatened to move towards solar. And here we, with a piece of property that is designated commercial special that clearly had a specific use in mind, that we should not be allowing solar. You know, we're just not going to have any property left for a true commercial development outside of solar. Thank you.
Good, Carol, thank you.
All right. We have another additional member of the public. Go ahead, Elaine.
Just a second. My name is Elaine Calderon, and I am the Hopkinton representative to the Wood-Pawcatuck Wild and Scenic Rivers Stewardship Council. And tonight I would like to speak for the Conachit Brook and Tamaqua Brook. Hopkinton contains 4 tributaries that qualified for wild and scenic protection. And the Tamaqua Brook and the Conachit Brook are 2 of those tributaries. As outlined in Chapter 6 of the Wood-Pawcatuck Wild and Scenic Rivers Stewardship Plan, new alternative energy systems should be carefully sited to minimize any disturbance within the recommended 1/4 mile area along these nationally designated water bodies. And stormwater plans should assure all residues or sediments are captured and do not reach the water bodies untreated. The array under discussion appears to be within this buffer area of the Conachit Brook. And if I understood one of the first speakers, stormwater will be discharged to both of these brooks. Now the brooks may look modest from the sides of the river, but the wetland area and those brooks are very important. They were important enough to be designated as part of our National Wild and Scenic River System. Conachit Brook, in particular, has been identified as containing a population of wild brook trout, and that is very rare around here. So given this unique status of these 2 brooks, if this proposal goes forward, I would like to request the planning board and the applicant to take their status under consideration when setting buffers around the brook's edge, to look beyond the normal DEM buffer requirements, and to find some way to use 2 wild and scenic designated brooks as not discharge areas, and to address any and all other issues that may negatively impact the brooks. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
If there are any other members of the public at this time.
So that's it. We've heard from everyone who cares to comment. So let me circle back to planning board members who deferred. Let's hear what comments you might have.
Oh, Harvey just raised his hand.
Sorry about that. Let me, planning board members, you'll have to hold while I exert a little bit of authority here. Harvey, are you out?
Go ahead, Harvey.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I would request that there be a site visit, and that's the extent of my request.
Okay, very good, Harvey. Thank you. Duly noted. That said, let me return to planning board members.
Okay, I'll go first if that's okay.
Go right ahead, Ron.
The question of the 50,000 square foot warehousing building. If it's going to be used for just the batteries for the solar field as spare parts, or if it's going to be commercially let out, that's something that we need to address. But I think, in my mind, the biggest issue right now is the legality of it. We've heard from some attorneys that they believe it's not a legal move to put anything there. The actual status of the zoning of that property, in my mind, is in question. I'd like to have more information on that, something definitive, not just someone's opinion, but something that could actually stand up in a court of law saying it's zoned for this, or it's zoned for that, or it's not zoned for anything and you have to leave it alone. That doesn't seem to be really clear. We have two opposing opinions that need clarification. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, very good, Ron. Thank you.
Welcome.
If there's another member of the public who'd like to comment.
I'm in the planning board mode right now. So just whoever's out there from the public, please hang fire. I'll get to you. Planning board members. Are there any planning board members that care to comment? I'm not hearing anything. Okay, we're moving on. Who's in the public that would like to offer comment?
Please state your name for the record.
Hi, it's Eric Bibler. I was trying to unmute on a telephone, but I had to go on my computer to be recognized. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I have a procedural question and a comment, and I guess my procedural question first, through the chair or to the chair, relates to the comment that was just made by Ron Prelwitz. My question is whether, and maybe this is a question for the solicitor through the chair, is the planning board obligated to agree with the ruling of the solicitor, or can the planning board exercise its own judgment and decide that it concurs with a legal opinion of an objector or some other party? That's my question.
Very good. Let's stop there. That is, of course, the question of the evening. So is Sean out there?
He is.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Can you
Sean,
hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. Would you care to opine on the response to that question, please?
Certainly. So just to give a bit of background, in your packet, it's my understanding you have correspondence from the solicitor's office as it relates to the particular legal issue that you all are grappling with this evening. That correspondence was provided after after the previous meeting where this issue was brought up back in February, where both the objecting party as well as the applicant were asked, and they both did provide their own legal opinions. And then this office, the solicitor's office, drafted its own legal opinion and forwarded that to the planning board. And so you have that there. So to answer Ron's question, the solicitor's legal opinion has been provided to you in writing, and I believe that's been made public as virtue of being placed in the packets tonight for the planning board, as well as I believe they were handed to both the objector and the applicant when they were produced back in March. To answer the question that has been posed by the public, the planning board is in its right to make its own determination. So in theory, you could accept the legal opinion of someone other than the town solicitor. Obviously, this office would caution the planning board when doing so, if it does decide to do so. And having reviewed some of the law as it relates to this particular issue, it's safe to say that you are entering into uncharted territories as it relates to being put on notice of a legal opinion from your
town solicitor and then going contrary to that decision. So I would just caution and the planning board to act as carefully as possible when making the decision, but the short and concise answer after all that is that after weighing the arguments before you, you are entitled as a body to go in which direction you believe is best in accordance with the law and arguments regarding the legal analysis that's put before you.
Good, Sean. Thank you very much. Eric, does that answer your question?
That answers my question, and I would also, but that's just, I had a comment too, but I'd just
Sure.
like to observe that, you know, we have only to read the newspaper to know that the Supreme Court of the United States reaches decisions all the time on a basis of a 5-4 vote, that very experienced jurists can disagree and disagree vehemently. I'm sure that whichever side the planning board comes down on in this opinion, it's very likely to be contested either way. So, but I'm very happy to know that that the planning board does have the authority to use their own best judgment on this. I would like to just highlight a couple of things. I'm not an attorney, but I have listened to these hearings and I don't want these things to get lost. First of all, the plain wording of the ordinance, as I believe Peter Squires referenced earlier, is that the permitted use, and I have it right in front of me, the permitted use of this property under the commercial special approval was mixed use plan development combining any of the permitted uses listed in items 1 through 15 above, and hotels, motels, conference centers, golf courses, etc. So that was, the permitted uses were referred to a list 1 through 15 plus hotels and motels. Now I have read the solicitor's memo, and I think it's instructive to look at parts of that as well. He says, he cites some boilerplate language as a sort of a preamble to his ruling or his interpretation on page 3 at the top of the page. And you'll see this all the time in court cases. And it says, when analyzing the meaning or intent of an ordinance, the court will look to the language of the ordinance. And when such language, quote, is clear and unambiguous, the court must interpret the ordinance literally and must give the words of the ordinance their plain and ordinary meaning. That quote is from a precedent ruling that is cited in court all the time, which basically says that whenever possible, you have to look to the plain language of the ordinance and you have to read it literally and give the words, quote, their plain and ordinary meaning. Now, just two paragraphs later in the solicitor's opinion, he says that, quote, incorporation into the ordinance of the entirety of the commercial use table indicates an intent to allow any commercial use on the property as defined by the commercial use table. Certainly the council could have used some obvious language such as any commercial use as defined, but nevertheless it does not follow that absent that particular language, the council intended to restrict commercial use to the basically list of uses. And then he goes on to say, as a matter of interpretation, it is assumed that the council at the time, as do all councils, understood the use tables and dimensional regulations are periodically amended. Therefore, the planning board can infer from the lack of express language cementing in place the 1990 zoning code within the zoning amendment that there was no intent to do so. So suddenly we go from plain language to a whole lot of speculation about what the town council intended at the time and what we can infer, and certainly they would have done something differently. This is in complete opposition to the other opinion that you received from Mr. Squires. But here's the real point. We had a meeting in February, and I think it was at that meeting, Peter Konopask stood up and he spoke to this board and he said, I was on the planning board from 1980 to 1992. And I can tell you that there certainly was no intent on the part of the town council or the planning board at that time to allow any commercial use under the code, under the zoning district use table. And I believe that our own chairman tonight, Mr. Diorio, made some comments to the same effect. I don't want to quote you out because I don't remember exactly how you put it, but you said something to the effect that, quote, you know, like something like, I may be one of the few people in the room that was actually here when all of this occurred. And I lived in Hopkinton at the time, or, you know, I certainly owned property here and spent a great deal of time in Hopkinton. And I remember that there was a great deal of concern about the size of this tract of land and how it might be developed. And that was one of the reasons why the restriction was put in place that 40% of the development after excluding wetlands had to be devoted to open space. And then this list of uses that was permitted under this commercial special designation were all seen to be relatively inoffensive and possibly supporting the mixed use development as a golf course with a restaurant and a gift shop and parking and, you know, all of those sort of amenities. So I don't know why our town solicitor feels that he can speak authoritatively to the intent of the council in 1989 or 90, when he was nowhere to be seen in Hopkinton at that time, and when others have already come forth and testified that it is their clear recollection that the town council of that time intended exactly the opposite. So I hope that you will keep that in mind, and I also think that you should be extremely cautionary about embracing this idea that commercial special can mean commercial special today and whatever the ordinance says. But if the project fails, that somehow the whole special part of the designation just falls away and it's just commercial property with whatever use, you know, may be permitted in the commercial zone at that time. Because I believe that we have many hundreds of acres right now that are commercial special, solar only. Any one of those could be subject to failure. So I would agree with Mr. Squires that the prior rulings were simply wrong. And in fact, if you want to go look at the Dubs property on Palmer Circle that was developed into a solar project, that property failed to observe the required 100-foot setback to the residential zone. We didn't even get that part of it right. And, you know, it was part of this project. I would submit that if this parcel was approved with a specific set of uses as a mixed use development, and if that development failed, and if a new buyer bought it in that condition with those restrictions, then it certainly has the potential for the new owner to go back to the town council and say, I'm not going to build a golf course. I don't want to build a golf course, but I'd like to talk to you about how we could change the zoning so that we could do something that is consistent with your comprehensive plan, acceptable to the planning board and acceptable to the town council and acceptable to the residents of Hopkinton. Let's have that discussion. That's perfectly fine. We don't want the property to be worthless. But this idea that the town council of 1990 had a crystal ball and foresaw the possibility of a 102-acre solar farm is just ludicrous, in my opinion. I hope that you will side with the opinion of the objectors.
Very good, thank you.
We have another member of the public.
Let's have it.
I'm going to read off the last four digits, 8281. Please state your name for the record. Please state your name for the record. They're allowed to speak, they're just not doing so.
Is there anyone out there that wishes to speak?
They've muted themselves, so I'm going to lower your hand. There isn't anyone else.
Okay, opportunity. So with that, we've heard from the applicant, we've heard from the public, we've heard from planning board members, we've heard from those representing abutting property owners. I'd like to think that we've provided concerns for the applicant to consider. There is a planner recommendation here. I will read it verbatim. It's only 2 lines. I recommend that the planning board direct the applicant to bring the master plan back to the board for further review, subsequent to it being peer reviewed by Crossman Engineering. So that is the planner's recommendation. I think that should probably be a motion by the planning board if you are so inclined. So planning board members, what's your pleasure?
I'd like to make that motion.
I have a motion. I'm sorry, was that a second?
Yes, Keith seconded.
It was a second. I have a motion and I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Iorio, yes.
Krelwitz, yes.
Keith, yes.
Light, yes. Shamsina, yes.
And there we have it. Thank you very much. Moving forward, next item on the agenda. An amendment to an approved plan, development plan review, photovoltaic solar energy system, Navisun LLC, successor in interest to Oak Square Development LLC, AP11 Lot 4741, Palmer Circle, Navisun LLC applicant. I would just ask that Jim give us a brief overview of what we're looking at this evening before the applicant gets started.
Yes, Jim Lamphere, town planner. The original applicant for this project was Oak Square Development. And they sold their interest in the project to a company called Navisun. And Navisun is in the process of clearing the land and preparing it for solar panels. And in the process of doing so, they asked the planning department to go out there and take a site visit because they felt that rather than abide by the approved plan, which called for clearing existing vegetation along Palmer Circle and along the southern portion of the property abutting a residence, it was so thick and adequate to screen, it would do a better job of screening than if they were to follow the approved plan, cut everything down, and then replant according to the landscape plan. So I made a site visit out there along with Talia, and we kind of concurred with their findings, is that the vegetation to the property to the south was very, very dense, and so I think their request is a valid one to make, and I think it was a thoughtful one to make on their part, and I think that their approach would do a much better job of screening this project from both Palmer Circle and the condos across the street, as well as the property to the south. So I would ask the planning board, I hope that you've taken a look at the plans in your packet and the written request to amend the plan. The other small item in this here is that the fence was supposed to have slats in it, privacy slats. And again, if you look at where the fence is, if the vegetation is clearly adequate to screen this thing, I don't really see what privacy slats are going to offer for this. So I hope the planning board has taken a look at the plans in their packet, and I would recommend to the board that they approve the request submitted by the applicant here.
Good, Jim. Thank you very much. If the applicant is present, we'd entertain a brief presentation.
Mike and Stephen, if you just want to press *9. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, just please state your name for the record.
Great. My name is Stephen Campbell, Managing Director at Navison. Thank you this evening for listening to us. As Jim had stated, we purchased this project from Oak Square Development at the end of last year and started construction towards the end of spring. And we've gotten to a point now where we have the site cleared to where we think it is adequate to accommodate the solar panels that will start being installed relatively shortly here. And our site contractor had called out the fact that the landscaping plan as currently proposed, we were supposed to clear cut basically right up to the property line along Palmer Circle and adjacent property owner, and then replant a vegetative screen back in there. We've basically looked at it and have come to the realization that we don't need to clear that, and that the existing vegetation is adequate, more than adequate. We believe it's got a very dense understory, and there are some larger trees that will remain to provide what we think is adequate buffering to the adjoining properties. I will make one note that there are a couple of small areas along the driveway, right at the end of the T and along the northern edge of the driveway, that we would plant, so that even as people are driving down Palmer Circle, if they were to look in here, there would be some trees planted along the corner and at the edge of the driveway to kind of close in that driveway, so no one would be able to see clearly in. So we're not looking for complete removal of all the vegetation that was proposed in the landscaping plan, but we are looking for the bulk of it to be removed, leave the existing vegetation in place, and then plant a couple of trees along that driveway to give just a little bit reinforcement so that we can block off the equipment pad. And then, as Jim also mentioned, because of the understory and what we would be leaving, we feel it's that we have the adequate buffering, that we're asking to remove the black slats along that side of the fence as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anything else to add to your presentation?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, very good. Let's start with planning board members.
This is
Okay,
Carol.
I'll go for it. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Run. You're killing me.
Surely not my intent.
Never mind. So I agree that the vegetation that's in place on Palmer Circle is thick enough. I would not want to see it removed. I applaud your comments regarding the exposure of the driveway to Palmer Circle. That was going to be something that I had brought up to you. But I want to bring your attention to the photos that you had provided to us in our package. We have figure 1, the view facing Palmer Circle from the site. And you can clearly see condo windows in there. And that depresses me a little bit. As you're aware, another solar project right around the corner from where you guys are putting this one in, and some promises were made over there. You can see that the vegetation that is remaining on the road isn't hiding anything. What you do see is that the black privacy slats do hide. It would be my suggestion that because today the trees are standing, tomorrow the trees could fall. We know how that works down here in Hopkinton. suggest that privacy slats remain. There's no assurance that that vegetation is going to be stable enough to withstand storm damage that we've been experiencing down here the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm a no on giving up on the privacy slats. I think they need to be tended to. I'd like you to take a look at the site from the condo owner's window view and think about what they're being exposed to. I don't see any easy solution to hiding what they're looking at there right now, but it's disturbing to me. And that's about all I got.
Okay, very good. Any other planning board members?
Okay, I'll go. I agree with using the existing vegetation as much as possible, but I'd like to add that before the closure of the project and it goes online, that our planner and one of their people walks the property or tours the property and decides if more vegetation is required. Kind of a medium ground, so to speak. That's all.
Very good, Ron, thank you. I'll take the
You're welcome.
opportunity, to endorse that, shall we call it a condition, if you will, if the planning board is so inclined. I would like to suggest that redundancy be incorporated into some kind of condition of the approval. Other planning board members?
Hey, this is Carolyn. I have a question for the planning board. When the Palmer Circle 1 development was before the board for approval, I recall us stating that they had to have a containment system that would support 125% of any fluids that could potentially leak from the equipment. And I'm asking now, because it wasn't done there, as it was, I believe I recall them saying, yes, it will be done. They also said you can't see it from 95. So my question is that a condition of this project as well?
Okay, great question. I'm not sure we can put our fingers on the answer to that right now.
Okay, I think that's just become a standard here in the community.
Sure.
And I'd like to know that they can support that, and what's our recourse if they don't, like, for instance, what happened at Palmer 1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other planning board members care to weigh in? Looks like
This is
no.
Emily.
Sorry.
Oops, sorry, Al. Just real quick. I concur on the condition for, adding a condition for one last site walk and assessment once the construction is complete to determine if additional vegetation is needed. I also concur with Carolyn's idea about, yes, let's please keep the privacy slats in the fence both for seasons when we have no leaves and other supporting materials on our vegetation, and in the event that trees fall.
Okay, very good. So let's see, this is an amendment to an approved plan. It's not necessarily a public informational hearing or a public hearing in itself, but if anyone in the audience wishes to be heard, I'll entertain a brief statement. No hands. Okay. Planning board members, it would be time for a motion should you be so inclined. Don't be shy.
Okay, I guess I'll take a shot at it.
There we go.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept their proposal to use the existing vegetation as much as possible, with the option of supplementing it with new vegetation where required.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Should the motion include our decision on the privacy slack too?
Okay, that's a very good question. I was going to interpret the motion to mean that by omitting any reference to the slats, that the decision was no. But I'll go back to Ron and say, Ron, if you would like to amend your motion to explicitly take a position on the slats, that probably would be preferable. Would you be so inclined?
Certainly.
So
How about if we add go ahead.
Oh, no, it's your show.
Okay, thank you. How about if we add the slats to remain in place where required?
There we go. Excellent. I'll consider that the motion. Now do I have a second?
This is Carolyn. Yes, you have a second.
Very good. I have a motion and I have a second. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Diorio, yes.
Prelwitz, yes.
Light, yes.
Lindelo, yes.
Shamshiniya, yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mr. Campbell. On to the next agenda item.
The next item on the agenda, I will be recusing. I am involved with this project. I am handing a notice of recusal to the clerk. And I would respectfully request Ron take the reins on this one.
And I am accepting Mr. Diorio's notice of recusal for this project.
Okay, here we go. Thank you, Al. This is for an extension of viability for the approved final plan, Sarah Land, 3-lot minor cluster subdivision. Maple Court, AP 25, lot 54. Do we have any discussion from the planning board members?
Ron, this is Carolyn. I'd like to hear from the applicant if they have any comments that they'd like to provide beforehand.
Certainly. Do we have an applicant present?
Unfortunately, the applicant is not present at this time.
Okay.
Okay. I have no problem with the motion to continue this. They've requested an extension, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Then I have no comments. I'm willing to agree to an extension here.
Same here.
Jim, do you want to give us an explanation?
Yes, this is Jim Lampier, town planner. In the absence of the applicant here, I just want to say that the applicant here is asking to extend the validity of the approval for an additional 90 days beyond the expiration date of November the 3rd. So the purpose of this extension, the project, as you know, was approved on August the 5th. And in your packet, I put a 11 by 17 diagram of the subdivision just to refresh your memory as to what got approved. The original applicant sold this property to Mr. Dan Lisi. And Dan Lisi is asking for this extension so that he can have an opportunity to amend this approved plan. Now, the amendment is going to consist of converting this 3-lot cluster subdivision into a 2-lot conventional subdivision. So it won't be a cluster anymore. It won't be 3 lots. It'll be 2 houses instead of 3. So you have to look at this as a, an improvement from the town's perspective on this. There'll be less traffic on the road, less wear and tear. And it's what the applicant wants themselves. So I think in order to give the applicant opportunity to bring the plans back to you, and they may come back to you in November for approval, I think an extension is warranted on the part of the board. So.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Planning board members, do we have a motion?
This is Carolyn. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the request for the extension of this subdivision for 90 days.
Thank you, Carolyn. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. Planning board members, vote please. Prelwitz, yes.
Light, yes.
Lindelof, yes.
Shamshiniya, yes.
Thank you, planning board members. Moving forward, I guess we'll turn this meeting back over to our chairman, Mr. DiOrio.
Thank you very much, Ron. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Moving to the next item on the agenda. Under new business, pre-application, development plan review, photovoltaic solar energy system, Kenyon Land Solar LLC, AP7, Lot 48, 34 Kenyon Lane Solar LLC applicant. Now, before we get started, the next two applications are pre-applications. That's their format. So just to be clear, again, for those in the audience, let's review our objective for pre-applications. And the pre-application definition is pretty much consistent throughout our ordinance. So I'm just going to paraphrase. So forgive me for abbreviating here. But essentially, the pre-application meeting aims to encourage information sharing and discussion of project concepts among the participants. It's important to realize that the pre-application is intended for guidance of the applicants, shall not be considered approval of a project or any of its elements. Of course, no formal action need be taken by the planning board at a pre-application meeting. So with that backdrop, if you will, I'm going to ask Jim to just briefly introduce the application, and then we'll hear from the applicant.
Yes, this is an application for a 250 kilowatt ground-mounted solar project on a farm. So this is a farm project. And it's actually an expansion of a 250 kilowatt project that was approved back in 2017 for the same property. So they're coming back now as they can and ask for another 1 acre plot of solar. This is a very large farm, and they could go as much as 3 acres of solar ultimately. But at the for the moment, they're just expanding to a total of 2 acres. It's really, in my view, it's really a simple project, and I personally can't see any point in bringing this back again to the planning board. It's going to be pretty much a duplication of what's there right now. And so, that would be my recommendation, that the board also set a decommissioning fee here in the amount of $9,227.28, or something rounded off close to that. And that dollar amount was taken by using the dollar amount that was set for Frontier Road on a per acre basis for the project. The one for Frontier Road was 37 acres, and they posted 343,000. So given the 1 acre size of this addition here, that works out to, little over $9,000 per acre. So I would say that the planning board should take a vote on this, okay, to to make a finding that the impacts of this proposed use are too minimal to warrant further review by the board, and set an amount of $9,200 for decommissioning. So I'll let the applicant make a brief presentation of their project. I just want to remind the board that it's getting close to 9 o'clock right now, and I really would rather reserve most of our remaining time to look at the Skunk Hill project, the next one on the agenda. So I hope the applicant can be brief here, and I hope the planning board can come to a relatively quick decision on this as well.
Very good, thank you, Jim. If the applicant, excuse me, if the applicant is ready for a brief presentation on this proposal, this is your opportunity.
Steve, Scott, and Drew, please press *9.
Ground control to the applicant. Are you out there?
Jim Lampier, Town Planner. Mr. Vardakis, are you prepared to make a brief presentation of this or an outline of the project?
You are in the meeting now. There are...
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I was trying to unmute. Again, thank you, Jim, and members of the board. My name is Andrew Vardakis. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Rhode Island. I work for Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Kenyon Lane Solar, LLC. As Jim mentioned, in the interest of time, I will attempt to be brief. You'll see in your packets, there's a lengthy narrative about a project description and all sorts of items in the ordinance. However, I'll skip to the drawings included in attachment C. As you can see on the cover sheet, there's a locus map and aerial image where you can see that previous project is constructed on Kenyon Lane that was permitted and approved in 2017. So we're proposing to construct a 0.9 acre project identical to that first project. So we go to the second sheet, drawing C101, sheet 1 of 2. There's a shaded area of the initial project, and the second project is located right next to it. Same principles apply. We have a 0.9 acre chain link fence surrounding the project. It's a 250 kilowatt system. We have an access road coming off of Kenyon Lane. We have a transformer in the modules, same as the previous system. We have consulted Kenyon Lane Solar LLC, Equinox Renewables has consulted with the fire marshal regarding the project. They did have a couple recommendations, same as the first project. They wanted to have a 20-foot wide access road and a 7-foot high chain link fence with some smaller mesh fencing, for climb resistancy. So it is our proposal to make those modifications in the final plan set for our building permit application. In regards to stormwater, it's a very flat open field, as Jim mentioned. It's grass. It's about a 3% slope. We had no stormwater issues with the first project and don't anticipate any here. In terms of screening, you can see Route 95 off to the northwest, and there's some clouded lines on the plan that show existing vegetation adjacent to Route 95 and Kenyon Lane. However, it's all the property owner of the 200-foot lot. We're only proposing some minor tree trimming for shading off to the south of the project. And as Jim mentioned, the applicant is amenable to the alternative decommissioning amount that was presented here tonight, as opposed to what was presented in the package. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. Again, there's detailed information in the packet. However, in the interest of time, if there's a specific question or issue, I'm happy to answer, or Scott Milnes and Steve Kerr, the applicant, are also on the line. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Let's start with planning board members. Questions, comments, concerns?
This is Carolyn. I think the condition of the road over there is horrible. If you've driven down there to take a look. It's tough if you're in a four-wheeler. You know, it's even worse if you're in a vehicle, but that has nothing to do with what we're here to talk about. We need to include a condition of the containment system, again, 125% of any fluids. And I guess we'd also need to include that we want the containment system to be coated and sealed. Other than that, I don't see any issues. I would like to talk to the planning board and to Jim about using the Revity project as the blueprint for setting the decommissioning. I don't believe any of the board members were comfortable with what we did there. I'm not saying that this project would cost a heck of a lot of money, but using that as a template for this project and projects going forward is not where I think I want to go. That's all I have. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Other planning board members?
This is Ron. I believe Carolyn's covered everything quite nicely. I'll agree with her.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else care to weigh in?
Keith here. Thanks, Carolyn. I agree about the decommissioning too. It's just such an unknown, and I don't know where we go with that. But
okay.
This is Emily. 100% agree about the decommissioning, and I have no other comments. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. All right, so listen, I'll jump on the decommissioning thing first. So I'm in complete agreement that while we were hoping that the Revity project, in terms of the decommissioning element, would serve as a template going forward, I think I share my colleagues' concern that that didn't really pan out the way we had hoped. That said, without suggesting that we're setting a precedent here, for a project of this magnitude, that being a very small project, it might be acceptable to adopt the suggested figure. I'll let you think about that while I offer a comment unrelated. So if we look at, so I'm going to presume that this is a project that the planning board will decide that we do not need to see this again. I'm being a little bit presumptive here, but I think due to the simplicity of the project, that's probably the direction it should move in. I would just suggest that whoever decides to make a motion on this would incorporate something along the following. If we look at sheet C101, note number 2, that note to me suggests that this plan was prepared by information completely sculpted from existing sources of data. This is really not the way we do business in town. This is not really how we should be setting precedents for any type of development, land development project. And I would only ask that the final plan set delete note number 2, and instead there be a clear indication that data represented is the result of information captured by on-the-ground observation. Otherwise, how would the planning board possibly know that what they're reviewing and approving is actually reality and not fabricated from some existing source of information that may or may not be correct? That would be my only comment. Otherwise, I have nothing else to add on this particular project. That said, can we go directly to anyone who might want to be heard from the public?
Yes, we have a member of the public wishing to be heard.
There we go. Let's have it.
Hi, this is Eric Bibler, and as you know, decommissioning is a subject that's pretty important to me. I agree with the rest of the planning board that we don't want to get hung up on a 1 acre, 250 kilowatt project. But I was trying to comment during the Revity proceeding when you got down to the nut cutting on the decommissioning, and I wasn't able remotely to get into that. I just want to make one comment on that with respect to decommissioning. I feel that we missed the boat on the analysis on the decommissioning with our town engineer's input, and I do not believe that the Revity conclusion should be a precedent of any kind. And the question that was missed was that there was an arbitrary assumption about what percentage of the solar panels 30 years from now could be repurposed, could be resold. And the metric that matters is based on the developer's own expert testimony from We Recycle Solar. It costs $44.12 per panel to recycle a panel. They calculated salvage value of $11 for every panel that they were able to repurpose. So that's $55 per panel times some number of thousands of panels, okay? And the flaw was this: there is no basis whatsoever. In fact, Mr. Cabral actually said it. He said he was unable to get anybody to certify, whether panels would be, usable or have any value 30 years from now. So there is literally no basis to believe that an arbitrary assumption of 50% of the panels or 60% or 30% or 70% of the panels can be repurposed at maturity 30 years at the end of the life of the project. That's totally unknowable. But every time you decide that you're going to sell one for $11 and not get charged $44, that's $55 of risk per panel to this town. So I believe very strongly that when our town engineer comes back and reviews what, the decommissioning estimate for the next project, which the PSES requires the developer to submit, that the question that has to be asked to our town engineer is, can you give us any reason to believe that your arbitrary assumption of 50% repurposing is any more or less probable than 0% reuse? And I believe that the town, just on a pure risk analysis kind of basis, needs to assume the worst. And our town needs to require that the developers reserve against 100% recycling. After all, the money belongs to the developer. He gets to keep it if it's not spent. If he sells 100% of the panels, good for him. He can pocket the difference, but we don't want to come up on the short end of that. So we didn't have a dynamic best case, worst case, most probable case kind of analysis and anything like that. And Mr. Cabral and the developer never provided any basis in reality for believing that they could know what the landscape will be like 30 years from now. So I hope that we will not accept this analysis of the Frontier Revity project as a baseline. And I respectfully urge the planning board to zero in on that question. If we can't have any confidence that any number of these can be repurposed or be guaranteed of that, then we have to assume that they're all going to need to be recycled at a pretty hefty expense. And we don't want that coming back to the taxpayers of the town of Hopkinton. So that's what I think is important about this discussion, not whether it's $8,000 or $12,000 for this project. Thank you.
Very good, Eric. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? No hands. Planning board.
Okay, I'll go. I tend to agree with Jim. This is something that's going to be added on to an existing project. The $9,200 seems like a fair amount. I would say we should go with it. That's all.
Okay, so there's no motion with a pre-application I'd like to think that we've given the applicant some guidance. Certainly, if you have any questions, this would be the time. You can also direct those questions to the town planner at a later date, and I'm sure you get clarity. So if there's nothing else on this particular application, I think we're done here. Everybody in concurrence?
Yes.
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 Okay, I'm going to take that as yeses all around. Very good, thank you. Okay, bringing us to the next item on the agenda, which is a pre-application, major land development, photovoltaic solar energy system, Skunk Hill Road Solar LLC, AP18, lots 8, 13, 14, at 0, Arcadia Road, 0, Lisa Lane, and 145 Skunk Hill Road Solar LLC applicant. Again, I would like to caution that this is a pre-application. There may be many folks that want to weigh in on this. We'll try our best to get to folks, but in the event that we don't, please exercise the option of sending your concerns, comments, whatever they happen to be, directly to the planner, and he will ensure that those comments reach the applicant so that those concerns can be incorporated into the project moving forward. So that said, I would ask Jim to just give us a brief overview of what we're looking at, and then we'll go to the applicant.
Yes, this project, it was the recipient of a zone change and a comprehensive plan change by the town council. And it was initially came to the town as 2 separate projects, but it was requested to review it as one because they are interconnected. The connection lines from the extreme, one extreme property go through the other properties out to Arcadia Road. And so it was reviewed as one project by the town council. So because it became, because it was done as a zone change, they have to come in as a major land development project with this. And the state law says that we have to have a pre-application meeting is mandatory for major land development projects, and that's what we're having tonight. And as the chairman previously said, pre-application meeting is a conversation between the applicant and the planning board so that the applicant can get some guidance and go forth and bring us a master plan at some point in time. So with that being said, I think it's time to turn the meeting over to the applicants. Let them have a relatively brief overview of the project. And then I also imagine, even though this isn't a public informational meeting or a public hearing, I think because of the interest that this project has generated in the community, I think once the applicant gets appropriate feedback from the board, everything that the board has to say, I think it might be appropriate to hear from the public so they can also weigh in on it at this time. So with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant's attorney.
Thank you,
this
Jim.
is Carolyn. Can I ask for Sean's ear before we go over to the applicant?
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay. I'm totally stuck on the legalities of what company we might be talking to here. First, I would like to say that as far as Skunk Hill Road Solar LLC, Skunk Hill Road Solar joins the company of 30 other LLCs combined between Mr. Epps and Mr. Rydell. That's enough to hand out for Halloween treats. But the what brings my concern to Sean is that we have what is supposed to be a corrected record in front of us. My first comment on this corrected record is that the name of the company that is on this corrected record is not a registered company in the state of Rhode Island. The registered company is, in fact, as it's proposed in the narrative, Skunk Hill Road Solar LLC. That's my first problem with moving forward. My second problem is this, in my mind, it's a supposed correction because A, our planner didn't provide us with a corrected ordinance, and B, the one that we're looking at is not signed by Frank Landolfi or attested to by Elizabeth Cook Martin. So, with those two things out of the way, I also want to bring our attention back to the zoning certificate. And the applicant's name here is Hopkinton Land 1 LLC. Again, it's part of that group of 30 LLCs that these two gentlemen have registered at the address in Providence. Shouldn't the zoning certificate reflect Skunk Hill Road Solar LLC? Those are all legal business questions, and because these types of issues tend to get picked apart by participants and people waiving their concerns, I'd like us to tend to it at the front end. And I don't want to go through an hour and a half or 3 days worth of presentations if none of this business entity stuff is legitimate.
Okay.
So,
Carolyn, I hear the
Dawn,
concern. What is the question?
the question is, Sean, with all of these inconsistencies in who is applying, I went back to the beginning of the Atlantic Solar presentation for this project. With all of these inconsistencies, should we consider this a legitimate pre-application hearing?
Carolyn and Mr. Chairman, you can certainly continue forward as at this hearing or at this time for the pre-application meeting. I certainly, Carolyn, will look further into these particular issues. I'm not prepared to speak authoritatively on each issue that you raise as it relates to the different LLCs that may or may not be listed on different aspects of the application. However, I will review that, and this office will get back to the planning board to give a more conclusive answer. But as it relates to the agenda item this evening, you're more than eligible to proceed at this time.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll send a list of the pointed questions to Jim Lanfair and Al so that they can forward them along to you, and what I would hope to achieve by having you invest your energy there, okay? Thank you very much for hearing me out, guys.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay, so moving to the applicant.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board of Hopkinton. My name is Robert Craven. I practice law at 7405 Post Road in the town of North Kingstown. I'm here tonight to represent the now questioned corporations, but I can tell you that the corporations are in fact active and are recorded with the Secretary of State in relationship to what has been anecdotally known as the Skunk Hill project, including the address, and it's the Teff property and the Gordon property. It is obviously a pre-app for a major land development for a solar facility selling the product to the grid. I have two witnesses tonight. Alan Benavides, he's an engineer with Woodward and Curran and has presented on this project before the town council. And Frank Epps, a principal in Energy Development Partners, which is the parent company of, I'll assume, those 30 corporations that the last witness just referred to. With that, I'll turn it over to Alan Benavides to give you an engineer's overview, and then Frank Epps will give you a more business-oriented overview and answer any questions. Alan?
Very good, thank you.
Super.
Let me just go up here for a moment. So again, I would only caution that pre-application, broad overview, please.
Yep.
We're looking to give you feedback before you leave this evening. I believe that most of that feedback is going to come from the public. So let's try and allocate adequate time for that element. With that, please proceed.
Great. Okay, my name is Alan Benavides. I'm from Woodard & Curran. Our offices are at 33 Broad Street in Providence, and I've testified throughout the state of Rhode Island on a number of solar arrays similar to the one that you're discussing tonight. Some of the basics, there's 3 parcels as we talked about. There's a total of 168 acres between all the 3 parcels combined, and the project involves a 20 megawatt AC solar array. I'd like to just touch briefly on the sort of the evolution that the plans have taken to the point where they've gotten to the planning board tonight. The first set of drawings, the concept layout, was developed back in October of 2018, actually reviewed by the planning board back in November of 2018. Those are the plans that went with that comp change and zone change. And that was the original version of the drawings. As the project went through the zoning change process, there were a number of public meetings, substantial comments from the public as well as the town council, and the plans were modified as that process went along. And so there were very substantive changes that occurred since that original version that went to the planning board. So the size of the system was reduced, the remaining wooded areas were increased, panels were removed from certain areas that were near residential areas, residential setbacks were increased, visual berms were added to the project. So as the project evolved through that zoning process, there were changes that occurred to reflect the comments that came up. Lastly, as part of the issuance of the zone change, there are about 20 conditions that related to the design of the project. So the drawings that were submitted as part of this pre-application major land development reflect those 20 conditions that were part of the zoning process. There's a table that's in the application that goes through each of the conditions that were part of the zone change process and how this drawing set reflects it. I'm obviously not going to go through it tonight, but just to reiterate that there's been substantial changes and that reflect the public as well as the town council to get to the version that we've got tonight. I'd like to touch on quickly 3 of the drawings, probably spend most of the time on proposed conditions. Those of you who have access to the drawing, figure 1 shows the existing conditions plan. There were also, was a kind of separate set of drawings, was a very detailed existing conditions plan. But the one that's provided as part of the application, figure 1, is a look at the entire project. It shows the parcel boundaries in red, it shows the wetlands, and it shows the wetland offsets in both the riverfront as well as the buffer zones. Since this went through the town council process, there's been a new topographic survey. There's a new property boundaries, or there is a property boundary survey that didn't exist previously, and the wetlands were delineations were updated since that process. So this is very up-to-date information that's shown on the existing conditions plan. The second drawing that I'd like to touch on quickly is the proposed conditions plan, and that is drawing 5. It's essentially the same view of the project that you could see on the existing conditions plan. And there's really 2 sort of general array areas. There's an array area to the north. It's generally located on the Teft property. So that's Plat 18, Lot 14. That's one general area of the array. And then the southern area is located on the Gordon parcels. And what I'll do is just touch on those very briefly. That northern one on the Teft parcel, you can see that access comes off of Skunk Hill Road. And the access road is shown in dark gray. You can see it leading southerly through the arrays and located into the array that's kind of the center portion of the site. So that's the access onto the site. The blue is obviously the panels, so that's where the current panels are located. As I said earlier, there were panels that were beyond the location of where these are currently that were modified and cut back as part of that zoning process. The other thing to know on the existing conditions plan, also a comment to respond to town council rezoning, is the areas shown in purple are 12-foot landscape berms. And those were incorporated to provide screening to abutting properties. There was a very detailed process that led to the location of these specific berms. It's also to screen the project from Skunk Hill Road. So purple shows the berms, blue the panels, and the brownish color are the wetland areas. So that northerly area, that is approximately 98 acres. The fenced portion of the site, so if you take just these two northerly arrays of the TEF property, that's approximately 38 acres. And one thing I do want to comment on, because it was a significant part of the review process as it went through rezoning, is the existing wooded area in that portion of the site is 67 acres. The proposed cleared area is 25 acres, and the remaining wooded area is 42.5 acres. And the point I'd like to make there is that that 42.5 acre was mandated as part of the rezoning process. So it established the amount of trees that need to remain, and that will be a consistent requirement as we move the process through the land development process. As I said, there's 12-foot berms that are located in the north and on the eastern boundary. The southern array, smaller array, it's approximately 15 acres, and the entire site there is 71 acres. So to touch again on the wooded area, there's existing 62 acres. There's approximately 16.8 acres of that will be cleared, and the remaining wooded area is 46.1 acres. And again, that was a requirement established as part of the rezoning process. So to summarize, it's a 20 megawatt AC solar array in its entirety. There's 168 acres total, and the array will occupy approximately 53 acres. So obviously, we're in the pre-application process. Welcome any comments from either the board or from the public. And as you know, this is going to make its way through the major land development process, a very detailed process that will certainly get opportunities to modify the design, and certainly will go in parallel through the RIDEM process, Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, where it'll be, we'll certainly be submitting preliminary determination regarding wetlands, as well as a RIPD's, Rhode Island Pollution Discharge Elimination System, land clearing permit as well. So with that, I'll end my portion of the presentation.
Good, Alan. Thank you very much. Next witness, please.
Frank Epps. Frank, are you on?
Yes, I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very
Yes.
good. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Frank Epps. I am a principal of Energy Development Partners and also a principal and manager of Skunk Hill Solar LLC and Hopkinton Land Trust One LLC, the owner of the property, formerly known as the TEF property. I think Mr. Benavides did a very good job in giving an understanding of the project and the processes that we went through for the zone change. Clearly, I'd like to point out that the berm situation is something that is unique to many projects in the Hopkinton area. We've done this at considerable expense to ensure that screening, adequate screening is applied to the areas sensitive to the residential areas. Additionally, we have decided not to, if you can see on the property itself, on the Gordon property, we have decided not to develop the areas north of the most southern array towards the Lisa Lane area, and we've done that on purpose to ensure that that area will not be touched for development whatsoever. The interconnection itself, instead of going through the up and down the Skunk Hill Road area, the interconnection is a single interconnection coming off of the southern array, and we move the interconnection section of the array back into the array itself to minimize any type of issues concerning noise or visual impact to abutters. And so therefore we are going underground through an additional lot that is a very thin lot going out to Acadia Road and making our interconnection that way. So there's no poles on this area. It is all underground and then going up to connecting to the existing poles up on Acadia Road. So other than that, I think Mr. Benavides did a phenomenal job of describing the system, and I would like to yield, Mr. Chairman, so that the public can make comment. Thank you.
Very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all the witnesses I intend to present at this stage of the application process, and I'll be happy to have either the witnesses or myself entertain any questions from the public or the board members.
Yes, Jim Lampier, Town Planner. A couple of questions I have. I'm looking at lot number 8 and I'm looking at lot number 13. And I see that the southern array there goes across the property line. So I'd like to know what your intentions are in terms of merging these 3 lots, if any. That's the first question. And the second question is, we have been consistent in determining that access roads are a part of the PSES and that they shall not be in the setback areas. And I noticed that the access road coming from Arcadia Road goes through a very, very narrow bottleneck at a certain point in time. And it doesn't appear to me as though it's respecting the setback areas for that particular lot. So I'd like to know how you plan to deal with that.
I assume you're asking me, Jim. As far as the lots are concerned, I think it would be appropriate under the circumstances, since it's a single use, to merge the lots. I would go through the legal process to doing that. And as far as a road qualifying to observe the setbacks, I'm not quite sure that that's required. I will defer to your question and give you a legal answer when we come back for the next stage, or discuss it with you in your office at some point in time.
Al Diorio, I would certainly suggest the latter. We don't want you engaging in design work that's going to be adversely interpreted by the planning board. So consult with Jim, square that away.
Yep.
Good. Okay, let's start with planning board members. Questions, comments, concerns?
Okay, this is Ron. I'll go first. It was brought to my attention. I don't know if this would be directed towards Attorney Craven or to Mr. Epps or to the other gentleman. But it's been brought to my attention that the property in the southern portion between the panels and Lisa Lane is on the table for being donated to the land trust. Am I correct in that?
That is true, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Any other planning board members?
This is Emily. I don't have any questions. I just have a few comments. I know, I'm sure folks are going to bring this up, but I feel like I need to weigh in on it as well. The planning board voted unanimously to send a negative advisory opinion to the town council for rezoning this parcel or set of parcels from residential to commercial in November 2018. And the changes to the plan since that initial planning board review that the applicants are describing as the zoning process don't make it magically consistent with the comprehensive plan. especially specific portions of the comprehensive plan that were cited by the planning board back then as reasons for inconsistency, such as preserving, protecting the significant natural resources of the town as an endowment for the future, et cetera, et cetera. And the 3 town council members that voted to approve this zone change aren't even running for re-election next month. So in my mind, they created this mess and then walked away and handed it to the planning board to deal with. So I'm finding it very difficult to view this project in a positive light as shown on these diagrams. The fragmentation and disconnection of the wetlands within these properties from the forest is just really upsetting, actually, to see vast solar fields dotted throughout this landscape. So those are my thoughts. I have nothing else to add. Thanks.
All right, very good. Thank you. Other planning board members?
It's Keith here. I'll weigh in. Just don't have my mind made up, but unsupportive of this project at this moment, and especially, you know, with everything else, we mentioned it before. I'm concerned about not only the beginning of these projects, but the end life of them, and how much unknown there is. And again, we don't want to have precedent set by the last project that we just approved. So it just would temper the expectations that going forward, we'll have some long and serious discussions about the end life of this project.
Okay, very good. Anyone else?
We have a member of the public.
Yeah, personally, I'm going to defer any of my comments. I'd really like to get to the public with the time that we have remaining. So unless the planning board members have any other thoughts, comments, or concerns, I'm ready to go to the public. Everybody okay with that?
So it's actually 9:41. As we know, the clock on the wall is incorrect, just to give you a time estimate
Got
of
it.
where we are.
9:41, duly noted. Members of the public, this is your opportunity.
All right. Go ahead,
Hi.
Eric.
Okay, hi, it's Eric Bibler. You know, first, I see that we've revisited this issue of decommissioning, and I just want to recall that on the Revity and Frontier Solar project, the planning board members made a number of cryptic references to guidance that they had received from the town solicitor. There isn't any document like that was ever made available to the public, but I think almost every single planning board member made reference to some sort of guidance, or in the words of one planning board member, some back and forth with the town solicitor. So I would just like to make a request that in order to demystify this whole topic of what the planning board is obligated to do in the face of this expert testimony and, you know, so forth and so on, I'd like to ask that this guidance that the planning board was provided with concerning the rules of the road be provided on the town's website so that all of us can have access to it, so we can understand what the heck's going on here with that.
Yeah, duly noted. I think we're planning on taking care of that misstep as we move forward.
Okay, and then the other thing I just want everyone on the planning board to know, I don't know whether any of you attended the, you know, as citizens, any of the Crandall Road hearings, town council hearings for Crandall Road after this planning board rendered a unanimous advisory opinion on that project. On September 21st, at a meeting of the town council that I did not attend, 2 of the town council members and the town solicitor took a detour during the explanation of their reasons for their decision, and indulged in an extraordinary public flogging of me personally. And during that incredible diatribe against me personally, I was accused of essentially lying and making a number of false statements. I had said at a prior hearing that there were 2 legal challenges to the town of Hopkinton and the town council's process for approving these projects outstanding. Both Councilor Sylvia Thompson, President Landolfi insisted that that was just flat out untrue. And they asked the town solicitor, Mr. McAllister, to confirm that that was false, and he agreed. So I just want to correct the record here. This project, this very project we're talking about tonight, there was an appeal filed on a timely basis on August 16th of 2019, an appeal to the comp plan amendment and the zoning change. On February 17th, 2020, the Superior Court dismissed the complaint without prejudice for having been too long and too detailed and including too many exhibits. You know, there's been a great deal of mockery about the length of pages, but most of those exhibits were just things like copies of the comprehensive plan, copies of various ordinances. They were provided as a convenience, but nonetheless, the judge did dismiss the case as being, the complaint as being overly long. What our town solicitor neglected to mention was that it was dismissed without prejudice. That ruling was appealed to the Supreme Court. He did mention that, but what it means to have it dismissed without prejudice is that the plaintiffs can refile the case in a form that is more abbreviated and more acceptable to the court. So that happened on June 2nd of 2020. The Skunk Hill complaint was refiled, and I'm sure the town council and Mr. Epps will be ecstatic to know that it's only 27 pages now, down from previously 160-page complaint. And it only includes a single exhibit, a one-page exhibit. And the only exhibit to that complaint as it's currently filed is the planning board's adverse advisory opinion of November 2018, finding that this project, by unanimous finding, is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. Now, that complaint was amended, and the amended complaint was filed on September 17th of 2020. And the reason for the amendment was that the attorney for the plaintiffs, Jim Donnelly, is retiring, and the case is being taken over by a new attorney, and the plaintiffs wanted to make sure that the complaint that was going to be pursued in court and defended was in a form that was satisfactory to the new counsel. So that happened. And similarly, the other case is the Atlantic Solar Main Street case. That appeal to that comp plan amendment and rezoning was filed on a timely basis on May 11th of 2020. And it also was amended slightly, and it was, that amended complaint was filed in Superior Court on September 3rd. It's all of 19 pages. I'm just mentioning that because our town council, confirmed by our town solicitor, said that was a lie. They didn't bother to go to the Superior Court website to check and see if these things had been filed on a timely basis. They all had deadlines associated with them. And I want this planning board to know that this legal challenge, basically in support of the prior findings of the planning board, that these comp plan amendments are illegitimate and not supported by the comp plan, are alive and well. I don't know whether Sean wants to weigh in and offer an apology on behalf of our town solicitor, but I want the planning board to know that those complaints are still very much alive, and I'm the lead plaintiff on both. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other members of the public?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, Harvey.
Hi, again, the scale of this project, I would love to see a site walk, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, boy, this is like 3 or 4 hours maybe to really walk this project. But I really think that site walks are a necessity on something of this scale to understand the impact on the neighbors, on the environment, and I would appreciate that the planning board schedule a site walk with the applicant.
Harvey, thank you very much. Duly noted. The only comment I would have there are, having conducted numerous site walks, both, as a planning board member and as a person in private practice, site walks are most productive at a particular point in the project. So just wandering through the woods is usually not very productive. So let's wait until we're at a juncture where there are things in the field that we can see, we can kind of get the project context, and then I very much support your idea of getting out there and taking a look at it on the ground.
Al, if I'm still on voice, I'm looking at the plans and I'm seeing these areas where the development is going to be and where the wetlands are going to be. And I'm looking at the neighborhoods and I'm thinking that I can make some judgments at this stage. I will leave that up to you, but to me, sooner is a way to do it. That would be my preference. Thank you.
I understand. Duly noted. Okay, very good. Anyone else in the audience?
Yes, I'm going to state the last 4 digits. 0977. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, this is Luann McCormick. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Luann McCormick, 9 Lisa Lane. And I just wanted to say that that I know that this board, the planning board, issued a unanimous negative opinion on this proposal, and that on behalf of all of the Skunk Hill abutters and neighbors, we want to acknowledge that and thank you for that. As you're aware, this project has been very hotly contested from day one. There are 63 direct residential abutters and hundreds of homes in close proximity. It's hard to imagine a worse location choice, really. However, as we know, the town council issued the zone change anyway, which is now, as Eric Bibler pointed out, the subject of a pending lawsuit. The other thing, that we feel is that the public is at a disadvantage right now. Particularly given this COVID and the remote meetings, I think it's much harder. Obviously, it was difficult for people to get out and to go and sit at the meetings before, but now I think with being it's all on tech, it's all online. I think it makes it harder to participate for many people. I just want to assure you, the members of the planning board, that all of us over here at Skunk Hill are very keenly interested in every aspect and are following this very, very closely. This is something that is very close to our neighborhood, and we feel strongly that it is being put in the wrong place, and we are counting on you to have our backs, and again are grateful for your negative opinion on this project. Thank you so much.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So let me just digress here for a moment. 9:54. Talia, can you give me a feel for how many hands are flagging us down?
There's one hand right now.
One hand. Okay. Well, again, I just want to stress, unless the planning board members tell me that they're prepared to, work into the night, we're going to be wrapping this up shortly. So my thought process is If there's one or two or a couple of members of the public that still want to be heard, we want to get to them. Otherwise, again, I stress, for those in the audience listening, get your comments or concerns to Jim via email. Jim will disseminate those to the applicant, and we can get the project moving in a direction that's going to be productive for everybody. Okay, so let's have that one hand.
All right, 8222, please state your name for the record.
Hi, this is Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. How is everyone?
We're doing well, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, I just want to make a comment. The chair was very clear in the beginning, and I agree 100% with the amount of projects that are on the schedule to be concise and go through one project at a time. We had one particular resident that came on for about 10 minutes. We heard about decommissioning fees and $12 panels and $44 panels. We're past the Revity project, and this resident comes back again to talk about issues with the Revity project. Also the fact that what he did not tell you was that tried to be on the agenda for the town council meeting to talk about his, quote, flogging, and that was denied. I don't know why we're talking about the Crandall Road project, to spend another 6 minutes on that and listen again about the court case. I like to follow the rules, and I had one comment that I wanted to make during public forum, but it doesn't look like I'm going to get to that, but it was real quick. I think Carolyn Light and the other planning board members, I agree with this. For Revity, I'm going to refer back to it as another resident did. There's a strict schedule of Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I continue to follow the Maxon Hill Road project, which had the same restricted schedule, which I think is more than fair, and they continually work when they please. I've been down there a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday, and there's 3 construction crews that are working there. I'm very concerned with the Revity project because, as Mr. Colombo stated, we need to work Saturday, and I heard it again tonight. And I'd like to know that we're not going to make exceptions. The rule is the rule, and I believe that they should be fined. If they want to work on a Saturday, then there should be some financial consequences for them not following the rules. We are the residents of Hopkinton. They come here to earn big dollars, and they need to follow the rules. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Very good, Joe. Thank you. Any other hands out there? There are none. Planning Board, what is your pleasure on this pre-application as we wrap up this evening's meeting? Are you comfortable in sending the applicant away to continue their efforts? Or do you want to continue this discussion?
Away.
Sorry? There was a comment in there. What was that?
It was an insignificant comment.
Insignificant, okay. So hearing none, I really have no recourse here but to suggest that the planning board and the citizens have provided the direct guidance at this stage of the game. There's no motion required for the pre-application, and the applicant is directed to continue to work with the planner to move his project forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time, and thank the members of the board and the public for the input.
Very good, thank you.
See you.
Okay, moving forward to the lighter portion of the agenda. Do we want to discuss possible scheduling of an agenda item at either a special planning board meeting or a future regular planning board meeting regarding discussion of reforestation issues as requested by planning board member Carolyn Light? What is your pleasure on this topic?
This is Carolyn. I would like to see us take some action on this I'd like the other board members to give us an idea of where they would like to go with it.
Want to do that this evening?
Do what? We have to reschedule this, and I just want the feedback from the other board members.
I understand.
Do we do a special meeting, or do we put it on an agenda, as an agenda item?
Yep. So my recollection of the treatment of this item was it was going to remain on the agenda, and we can either make a decision this evening, or we can continue to let it roll. And on one of those evenings where we don't have anything to do, we can engage in that discussion. So, Carolyn, listen, this is kind of your baby, so I don't want to seize the control here. So tell us what you want to do and we'll make it happen.
Could I throw my 2 cents worth then?
I'll take 2
Please.
cents.
After reading the draft that Carolyn put together and talking with Jim about the upcoming things that are going to be dealt with the planning board, I would think that we would need a special meeting. Now, my question is, how do we do that in this day and age? Can we get set up? You know, it's going to be very difficult to get together and discuss this, but it seems like there's quite a bit to discuss. It's a good draft. It's a good proposal. It's going to take time. And if we leave it on the agenda, we're going to be pushing something else off. I'm just curious how we can proceed with this.
Concur. May I offer a recommendation? And again, I
Yes.
guess so respectfully, I don't know what everybody's schedule is like in this day and age. Strange times. Would planning board members be available to start an hour early? And perhaps rather than another night committed, it would be an opportunity to tackle this issue. What do you think about that idea?
This is Carolyn, and I'm on board with that recommendation.
I would agree with that, to start an hour early. That way we're not dragging it out till the wee hours. An hour early and attack this thing first and then move on to the other items that are on the menu.
Okay, so we got 3 players who are okay with that idea. Anybody else care to chime in?
So that's a hard time for me, but I'll do my best once we have the date scheduled.
It would most likely be the date of the next regular meeting. At least that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
Okay.
This is Emily. I think that's a great idea. I also really liked the idea that was floated last time when we talked about this, which was if folks are able to read Carolyn's draft and jot down some ideas and send them to Jim and Talia so that they could maybe collate them or put together kind of like a cheat sheet of what everybody has been thinking or some of the main ideas that might rise out of this. I know that requires a bit more work on the part of everybody, but I think that would make for a really productive hour that we're talking about next month. I know I really wanted to be able to get to that this month, but my work schedule just didn't allow it. So I would think that given this amount of notice, maybe we could spend a couple or, you know, an hour or so to put our thoughts together and send them in so that we could have something to react to too at the time of the meeting.
A very good suggestion. To the extent that it's possible, given all of our respective schedules, why don't we endeavor to do that? And then I would respectfully suggest that for our next meeting, which is going to be on November 4th, that we set our start time at 6 o'clock with the intention of devoting the first hour of the meeting to Carolyn's proposal. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
This is Carolyn. Yeah, and I'd like you guys to know that I was about the same time in November last year when I sat down and started researching that. So, hey, I'm going to have an anniversary party too.
Okay, very good. All right, that's the way we'll handle it.
Bring cookies.
Consider it done.
Okay, just a couple of items before we can call it quits for the evening. Planners report.
Yes, Jim Lampier, Town Planner. In your packet, I put a copy of an administrative subdivision that I approved off of Jacobson Trail. So you can see that. That got recorded, and that is done. And also, I gave you a copy of the final plan for a minor subdivision that came before you a couple of months ago. And while the board didn't explicitly state, delegate final plan approval to the administrative officer, the discussion, when I reviewed the minutes, it suggested to me that the board didn't need to see it back again. So I did the final on the minor subdivision, as I quite frequently do. And I provided in your packet evidence that they've complied with the conditions of approval set by the planning board. So those are my two reports.
Okay, very good, Jim. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome, Carolyn.
So I don't know if it's an omission, but solicitors report, we're not calling for that?
No, it was communicated to us that if they did not have something expressly to put onto the record, that we should just leave it off.
Okay, very good. Good idea. Correspondence and updates?
There is a letter in your packet from the Wood Pawcatuck Wild and Scenic Rivers Stewardship Council from Elaine Calderon of interest to you. So that's your correspondence.
Very good. We appreciate getting that. Public forum. Anybody out there?
Al, this is Emily. I just wanted to add something about the letter from Elaine and the Wild and Scenic Rivers Council. If folks on the planning board are interested, Elaine's letter makes reference to a 1/4 mile buffer around the rivers and their tributaries. And it's my understanding that that council is working on some more discrete guidance about what types of activities or best practices could be applied in that 1/4 mile buffer in terms of planning perspective. So if folks are interested in seeing a map of what that looks like, I'd be happy to share that because I was curious myself and so I made one. And I would show it to you or bring copies if we were meeting in person, but since this is virtual, I'll send you a link or a PDF if you're interested. Just let me know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Personally, I'd very much like to see that kind of mapping.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay, so getting back, was there anything under public forum? No hands. The date of our next meeting is November 4th. Again, our start date will be revised to 6 o'clock. There's nothing else that can properly come before us. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
I have a motion.
Second.
Carolyn, second. Keith,
I have-
second.
Any second. Any further discussion on the motion? Otherwise, all in favor? Diorio, yes.
Crowlitz, yes.
Light, yes.
Lindelof, yes.
Shamshiniya, yes.
Very good. I thank you all for your efforts.
Thank you.